A Legacy Art Journal folder. This time, my paternal ancestors. Here you see my file folder, and I've painted the bottom half yellow. And I'm going to collage the paper towel on the top of this. This, if anybody knows their flags, is the Ukrainian flag. And all my ancestors, paternal and maternal, come from Ukraine. And so I thought this was a fitting front of the folder. At this point in time, I'm thinking that this is going to be the folder for both my maternal and paternal ancestors, and I do change my mind and decide to give each their own folder. I had painted it and I just didn't like the texture. I wanted a little bit more color, so I'm collaging the yellow of the front of the folder here as well. Drawing and cutting up, cutting the sides. And it's always easier if you flip it to the back side. Putting my folder, my materials away back into my folders that you can see on a separate video where I organize the colors of my paper towels. And here I am arranging the quote that I have chosen to represent my ancestors, or this part of the legacy journal. And it says, "We are who we are because they were who they were." And so I'm just kind of fussy cutting, getting everything just right to the way it looks. It's amazing how much time gets spent doing these little things. So I'm happy with what I have, and I am going to use the same yellow and blue that I had painted on there first to paint the letters. And I have them split up because I'm going with the opposite color. So if it's on the blue background, they're going to be yellow. If it's on the yellow background, they're going to be blue. So I have the letters arranged the way I like them now, a little bit more cutting, and I'm just going to apply them with Mod Podge, applying a coat of Mod Podge underneath them and on top. And because of the texture of the paper towel, I'm having a bit of difficulty here getting them on, but in the end, the glue wins out. After a quick dry, I'm using my distress ink and my blending tool and just adding that antiquing brown look around the edges. Because this is my ancestors, I do want to make things look like they're a little bit older. going to use my Inktense blocks, and I have a brown, and I'm outlining it using my Inktense pencil, which I will activate with water. And I really get the antique look. It kind of blends and feathers out, so it does look very antiqued and very old, a little bit more grunged up than I particularly like, but it suits the theme of this folder. Just activating it with water. You can see how much it just sets off the words. Now doing the same thing with the bottom half. So using a stylus and my acrylic paint, I'm applying dots. The original font that I had chosen had dots in there, and I'm just following there and applying, again, contrasting color dots. Just adding that little bit of detail. This video is sped up to 4 times the speed of it is, the speed that it really was. So if only I can move that fast. I did this on 2 separate occasions with a lot of think time in between. So the video time was about 1 hour 20 minutes, and the camera was off for the drying and that kind of thing. So do not think that this takes such little bit of time. So there I am putting the yellow dots on the blue paper, matching the yellow background. So this brings an end to the front part, and now I'm doing the other part, and I'm just gessoing it. This time I'm taking my cube, and it has leaves pattern in it, and pressing that into the gesso to get some texture. Now, my memory that I'm going here is at my grandparents' farm, my dad's parents' farm. There was, I remember, one of my only memories is of this huge lilac bush. So that is what I am trying to recreate, the feeling or that memory in there. So I'm painting this green with Liquitex acrylic paint, and I'm stenciling in some leaves. These leaves are the same color as the background color that I applied with a baby wipe, and that is a new technique, and it works really well on the gessoed surface, and it allowed me to get into the grooves and crannies of the texture from the way I put the stamp into the gesso. If you do that, please remember to clean your stamp right after you've pushed it into the gesso. You don't want to ruin your stamps by leaving that gesso in there and clogging it up. This stencil, I believe, is a plaid or a folk art stencil. So I'm just cleaning up the green paint, pressing that sponge into my paper towels, which, as you've seen, I'll use in a collaging application similar to what you saw on the front of this folder. It dries rather quickly when you apply the acrylic paint with the baby wipe and then a stencil. and you can see the lovely, lovely texture of leaves behind it. So now I'm putting out the variety of purple paints that I have. Um, a lilac bush, there's many different varieties, and I don't really remember what variety it was. So I'm just going to paint some of the purple. I'm using the lightest purple here, and then I'm just building up, and again applying it with a makeup sponge. I just want it to look like that row of lilac bushes that I remember so well at my grandpa DeLugan's farm. This was a lot of fun to create. Was going to use that flower stencil, but lilacs have 4 petals and that had 5. So after attempts of using a stylus and attempts of using the eraser end of a pencil, I just go to one of my round brushes and I'm picking up a variety of paint colors, purples, and making some, not all, of the little lilac blossoms. I remember reading or watching it on a video and they said your eye will fill in the rest. You don't need to put every single flower on there. Your eye will read this as a lilac bush. So to me, that's the memory I'm creating. Adding more. Off camera, I do add a little yellow to the middle. So again, I'm adding water to the paints and I am going to reuse this leftover paint for collaging purposes. Waste nothing. So I'm painting the other end of the fold and I'm putting the purples in there, a couple of different shades of purple, applying with the baby wipe, and underneath the green. That has the texture of the leaves. A lot of this will be covered by what I'm going to be following this up in the next steps. I just thought if I had the whole thing in with all lilacs, it would get a little too busy. So I have pictures that I had sent from my father, copies of pictures, just Xerox copies, and I'm kind of arranging them. So I've got an idea of what I would like. I'm just going to apply the brown distress ink around the edges of all the photos just to finish it off and again to make it look like it is antiqued. And I'm sorry, I don't know what distress ink it is. If you don't have distress ink, you can use acrylic paint with an applicator, with a makeup sponge, and do it on the edges and get a very similar effect. So I have printed out all the names and the birth dates and the days they died on the paper is a little thicker than copy paper and has a nice smooth finish to it. So I'm just going to apply the pictures where I want them. This is the marriage photo of my father's parents. It was with her childhood home in the background. and the church that they were married in, that I have spent time in as a child growing up. I have their names, birth dates, and the days they died. I'm just putting that in. The stories about where they lived and how they came together are going to be written on tags that will just get put in. Either there'll be a jelly print on one side or they'll just be double journaling on both sides. But that's what the folders will hold, the more information. That's the inside of the church, which was the churches and their faith was very important to them. So on the left there, I have their marriage certificate or a copy of their marriage certificate, but I need to print that out on and get a better copy before I adhere it permanently. So that's just a placekeeper. I've got my black Stabilo all pencil and I'm just outlining the pictures, and I will follow that up by activating them with water on my round brush. This just sets off the pictures against the lilac bush behind it. And drying it. Doing the same to the front, the flap, and the pictures and the information that's held there. And a quick dry. So that front is done. So now I'm going to do the back of this, and I have printed out a map of Ukraine, and I'm not sure about the time of this map. What I do then is I go back to my photocopier or to my printer and I print that out on deli paper. And I'm going to apply a thin layer of gesso to this surface. And drying it. I'm going to put my yellow, my Liquitex Basic, again, I'm going to apply it with a baby wipe. And I kind of am going for that antique-y gold look. But also, many of my ancestors were farmers. I remember the flowing wheat fields, going to the farm and seeing the flowing wheat fields, the golden color. So I'm trying to capture that memory here. And there's the picture of Ukraine, the map of Ukraine. Just adding, getting a little darker color. And I dig out my cube and I apply gold paint to one that looks very much like wheat. And I'm putting it throughout. So it's gold and you have that little bit of shimmer and shine, and you have the look of a flowing wheat field behind the map of Ukraine. Now the borders of Ukraine changed throughout history. The part that my paternal grandparents and great-grandparents came from is now under Polish, is actually in Poland because they were right close to the border, but this gives that idea. And you didn't give you a very close look or a quick look or long enough look to see the gold there, but it really adds that little extra something. So the map is there, and I've torn the edges around the map. And now I'm going to apply the distress ink along the edges so that it looks very old and ancient and antique. And I really like how this turned out. It turned out better than what I was envisioning. And I choose to use the golden gel medium. It's in matte. And I'm applying it to the underside and the top, pressing down. I really want this to adhere because it's going to be folded as well. And drying it. Applying the ink tints or the distress ink with the applicator around the edges just to set it off. And drying it. I have a picture of the ship my grandpa came on, and that will be somewhere on this, I'm not sure where. And I'm adhering the names of my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents on the one side around the map. And just finalizing the details. Here's a close-up of the cover. We are who we are because they were who they were. The open folder with all the information and my lilac bushes. A close-up of half and the other side. The back side with the map of Ukraine and all my ancestors' birth dates and deaths that I have, and a close-up. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel, and you'll be sure not to miss any other videos. Thank you.